How will they train their forces? What will they do with regard to training and cultures? That remains an open question, but I think this has a lot to do with accountability. There's a lot to do with a new reckoning in our society, and I think it's really a major civil rights moment in our history.
You mentioned that videotape. People first see it, but when you watch it again, Gene Casares, as we await this verdict to be read, it could happen any moment now. When we watched it again, unedited, in that courtroom, it seemed to hit at a different level, didn't it?
You know, every time you watch it, at least for myself, I learn something new. I hear something I didn't hear. I see something I didn't see. It's all in the details, and this jury had the ability to look at that tape. They deliberated 10 hours. They had to have watched videotape as they were trying to make their decision.
All right, we await this verdict to be read. Again, it will happen any moment now as people are gathering in Minneapolis and really around the nation. We've seen some of the precautions that they're taking in Minneapolis to try and keep people safe. Yes, protesters will be out, and all are hoping that they are peaceful protesters who just want their voices to be heard no matter the verdict. Our expert panel is standing by. Areva Martin, your thoughts as, again, we could be seconds away from a verdict.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are surprised, Mike, that the verdict is coming back today at the time that it's coming back, because we didn't hear questions from the jurors.
Court has begun. Let's listen in.
Here it goes. A moment is going to change the whole nation if anything.
All rise for the jury. All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, Juror Foreperson, Juror Number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by Jury Foreperson, Juror Number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury Foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror Number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts? Yes.
Juror Number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror Number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts, so say you one, so say you all?
Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury. Seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument as to Blakely factors within 1 week. The court will issue findings on the Blakely factors, the factual findings, 1 week after that. We'll order a PSI immediately returnable in 4 weeks. And we will also have a briefing on, after you get the PSI, 6 weeks from now, and then 8 weeks from now, we will have sentencing. We'll get you the exact dates in a scheduling order. Is there a motion on behalf of the state?
Move to have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
Aye.
Thank you.
Going to jail now.
We're adjourned.
And with that, history made. Derek Chauvin found guilty on all counts, bail revoked. He was handcuffed and remanded into custody. Such an emotional moment. We know cheering going on outside that courthouse in Minneapolis. Joey Jackson, your reaction as you heard guilty.
No person is above the law. This is our system. This is our process. This is a new era and day and age in accountability. The fact of the matter is that anyone and everyone who transgressed the law need to be held to account. The jury spoke loudly and clearly with regard to their verdict, and what did they say? They said that this is unacceptable. They said that the conduct of Derek Chauvin as it relates to his use of excessive force resulting in the death of George Floyd is not acceptable in the society in which we live. They said that the depravity, the depraved heart, the inhumanity with which he treated George Floyd will not be accepted, is not okay, is unlawful, and there are consequences behind it. They said that with their verdict of guilty as to third-degree murder, depraved heart. They also said, Mike, that this negligence, you know the rules, you know the regulations, you know the policies, you know what to do and what not to do, and you did not do that. They said, based upon their finding of manslaughter, that he engaged in that conduct. They also, I believe, in rendering this verdict, really peeled back this whole blue wall. They really talked about, I think, because volumes it speaks when a verdict is rendered, that police have to act in accord, and they have to use that discretion in a way that respects communities, that respects people of color, that respects everyone that they interact with, and this will not be tolerated. We are in a new day and age. We heard the chief talk about the sanctity of life, and the sanctity of life needs to and should be respected. I've said before, and I will conclude with this, and I will say again, just like we saw the Me Too Time's Up movement, where people were mad as heck and they're not going to take it anymore, we're seeing a movement with police and policing. We're seeing a real revolution as it relates to that. And I can only hope and I can only pray with this right result here that this will send shockwaves not only throughout Hennepin County and Minnesota, but throughout the 50 great states of this United States, and how policing is going to look from this day forward. If ever there is a deterrent from what you should not do, if ever there is a deterrent to how you should honor your badge, this verdict is that deterrent. And what a day we have here, what a system of justice we have. Yes, there are things that need to be fixed moving forward, and they will be, but for today, Mike, this is a big moment. And finally, to George Floyd's family, wow. I just say to them, you know what? Not that there'll ever be justice. They lost someone so near and dear, but this is something that I'm sure is big for them, and that they recognize that this jury did its job.
We were watching some of the reactions there in Minneapolis. In the middle of one of those crowds, that was George Floyd's girlfriend, Courtney Ross. You could see someone hugging her, and the emotions beginning to pour out from so many. Gene Casares, your reaction as you heard guilty on all counts.
This is a profound moment. I think it's a moment that we will all remember years to come, where we were, what we were doing, how we heard it, how we reacted to it. And I think that Joey just said it more beautifully than I think anyone could. Just all of the ramifications of this. To take us back to the legalese for a second, the judge is most likely right now meeting with the jurors. And what a wonderful judge, so even-keeled, very fair judge. And I'm sure he's explaining to them, they may be concerned, they didn't want their names out, maybe they don't feel that way anymore, but he's explaining everything to them now while this community in Minneapolis and this country is reacting, absorbing, and realizing what this verdict truly means.
And again, we're taking in the reactions, the emotions there of George Floyd's girlfriend, Courtney Ross. We hope to hear from the Floyd family or a representative, the prosecution team. Also, a little bit later, we're going to hear from the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and President Joe Biden will speak as well. Reva Martin, your reaction?
Yeah, Mike, I am elated with the convictions.
Forgive me, we're going to listen to Courtney Ross here. She's giving her thoughts.
Courtney, you must be so relieved.
I don't know if I am or not. I will mimic to Shira that this is the first step in
I don't know, it's hard in here. Can't breathe. Courtney, did you ever doubt the
The only reason I did not doubt this moment is because Floyd's spirit is so strong with me, and he assured me that there was going to be a guilty verdict. So I never doubted him. I never doubted him. Never.
Just how emotional has this trial been for you?
There's been nothing like it. Nothing like it at all. From seeing, a precious 9-year-old little girl having to testify, to testifying myself.
Only one that got permission to do that. Only one that got the permission to do that. Given the history of law enforcement and African Americans, how significant is today?
Oh, this is a huge day for the world. We're finally starting to see, we walked around with eyes wide shut for a long time, so they're starting to open today, and this is going to be the first in a future of change. I promise you that.
People were very anxious about this verdict. Did you really expect this outcome?
Yes. I did.
Of course we did.
I did.
They knew it was going to happen. What does this moment mean for you?
What this means for Minnesota going forward is that we set the precedent.
I think for me it means that, my friends and people that have also lost loved ones now have a chance to get their cases reopened, have the people see that this is the first time this has happened in Minnesota, so
Now it's time for
a lot of work to do.
fucking talk about it.
Now it's time for Minnesota to talk about it.
Coach Floyd used to say before he died that he would change the world. He did.
It's time to stop
He changed my world. He changed the world. He's changed everybody. He's changed everybody. Everybody.
I can speak on that. That man had changed my world. I didn't start living until I came down to 30th in Chicago and started defending and protecting what I had to protect. Because that wasn't right. He changed my life.
Right, we're listening to George Floyd's girlfriend, Courtney Ross. A lot of emotion. Someone on a loudspeaker there, you could hear her say the emotions, nothing like it. She never doubted that there would be a guilty verdict here, and she said this was a huge day for the world. You could almost sense the relief as she smiled there and laughed a little bit with all that was going on, or all the people around her. Again, Reva, forgive me that I had to cut you off there, but again, your thoughts, your emotions on this historic day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to hear from her as well. She was also one of those outstanding witnesses that, showed so much courage during her testimony.
We're adjourned.
I know we're watching Derek Chauvin be carried off in handcuffs. How ironic. Someone who placed George Floyd in handcuffs, laid him prone on the ground for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Now we all, the world, gets to witness him be placed in handcuffs and carried off to a jail cell. Something ironic about that. And I'm elated, Mike, no doubt, about this conviction on all 3 counts. I feel so relieved for the Floyd family, who again is living this out personally, not just as a headline, not just as a world movement, but this was their brother, this was their dad, this was their cousin. So I know the feeling that they must have at this moment to know that there is some level of accountability and that our system has held this man, who now we can call him a murderer, to account. But I also feel like those protesters that we could hear in the background saying this is just the beginning, that there's so many other cases in our system that hopefully will get reviewed, will get an opportunity to have their voices, and that this issue of systemic racism doesn't go away because we convict one man for one incident involving his inhumane treatment of George Floyd. Yes, it's a big day, but it's also a day that we have to rededicate ourselves to this fight for justice. This is not an easy fight, and you heard the vice president say this conviction is not going to heal hundreds of years of pain that the African American community and other communities of color continue to feel and to experience. And we cannot forget that as this trial was going on, Daunte Wright was killed 10 miles from where George Floyd was killed. We can't forget about little Mr. Toledo in Chicago that was shot in an alley with his hands up. So the injustices that people of color continue to face at the hands of police won't go away simply because of this conviction. But hopefully, the officer, any officer that's on the street, will think twice before using an excessive level of force against anyone, and particularly will reevaluate how they police communities of color, because that is what, at core, I think this whole case has been about: the over-policing, the over-aggressive tactics used against police, against communities of color, not just by Minneapolis police, but by police across this country.
Again, what you're looking at here is some of the sites and some of the reaction there in Minneapolis. On the right, that's outside of the courthouse, so we're going to continue to monitor what's going on there, and we hope to have a reaction soon enough from the Floyd family, or a representative from the Floyd family. Prosecution team set to speak as well. So as we await that, we're getting reaction from our expert panel. Darren Porcher, you called it very early in the day. You thought today would be the day, and a clean sweep of guilty on all 3 counts. It happened. Your reaction?
I was prophetic in my bold prediction in that there was going to be a clean sweep, coupled with the verdict coming down today. So this was something that I projected. It had to go this way. To my esteemed colleagues' credit, the majority of them are esteemed attorneys, and you've been in this arena for many instances, but I genuinely believed in my heart that there was compelling evidence in relation to this video, and based on former Officer Chauvin's inability or unwillingness to take the stand, the jury had no other recourse but to reflect on that video, because he failed to introduce his rationale as to why he did what he did. Granted, he could have still been convicted if he took the stand, but it goes back to, I believe that it was a Hail Mary, and this was his only recourse to defend his position on a horrific act that he committed to. That being said, I think the jury made the right choice in a clean sweep, and now former Officer Chauvin is on his way to jail for a long time, hopefully, and we can back away from this and see this prosecution as a success.
We saw him in handcuffs, remanded into custody, and we know from the judge that sentencing will take place in 8 weeks. We're not sure the exact date as of yet, so we'll keep tabs on that. And Judge Cahill also thanked the jury for, and I'm quoting here, heavy-duty jury service. A heavy, emotional case. I'm sure we felt it as well as we watched some of the video. And there is the moment where Derek Chauvin is handcuffed and taken into custody. Again, this is the kind of trial that we will remember, a day in history that we will remember. Joseph Scott Morgan, your reaction?
Hey, yeah, Mike, I'm a science guy, but I have to defer to a different type of science now. We're on the cusp of a different world now when it comes to videography. I think that videotape stood with an accusing finger pointing toward Chauvin. I'm not surprised that he did not testify because the evidence provided, the videography evidence provided in this case was so markedly overwhelming. It spoke to his actions on that day. And I think that from a position of accountability, I've heard people talk about body cams and all this sort of thing. Well, it's not just the police that are carrying cams. It's the average everyday citizen. Of course, there's cameras on every corner now. So everything that is done has a higher potential to be watched and scrutinized and learned from, hopefully.
All right, again, we're taking in some of the emotions. You see people hugging, there are tears as they take in this verdict. Guilty on second-degree unintentional murder. Guilty, third-degree murder. Guilty, second-degree manslaughter. Eric Guster, you weren't sure this is the way it was going to go, but here it is. Your thoughts?
I am so thankful that this is the way that it went. I have seen cases lost on a lot less, and the defense attorney did an amazing job with what he had. And we always have to remember, jurors are people who don't take an entrance exam to get on the jury pool. They could be conspiracy theorists, they could be the weird guy at the bus stop, and they could dig their feet in. And that's what I was afraid of in this particular case, especially with the nation and so many people saying, well, why don't you comply, then you won't be dead. Those types of people couldn't make it on the jury. But Chauvin was clearly guilty. We watched this in real time, this man murder this man on video. So he had to be convicted. I'm thankful he got convicted, but there's always that one person or two people who may tie this jury up, and I'm thankful that this jury was chosen properly. I'm thankful that this jury took their service well, and they did the right thing in this case, and hopefully this will start programs in Minneapolis and other cities where they need to stop this over-policing, because this video from beginning, from the first approach of a gun being pulled on this man, on Mr. Floyd immediately, it was a crapshoot from the very beginning, and those types of things need to stop in our communities.
Absolutely. When you think about this, all started with an alleged $20 bill, and he's approached by Officer Wayne, and a gun is in his face. Within 15 seconds, F-bombs are flying, and this situation needlessly escalates, and a man ends up dead, murdered, according to this jury, who found Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts. Gene Casares, we watched what played out in court. It did not last long, but filled with drama. Any notes from court?
Yes, we have just gotten some, and I think I will start with something that occurred at the end. In the courtroom, the brother of George Floyd, who testified as one of those spark of life witnesses, appeared to both pool reporters to be praying almost the entire time before that verdict was read. And one pool reporter has just asked his brother, was he praying, and what was he praying for? And he said he was praying the entire time before that verdict was read. I was just praying they would find him guilty. As an African American, we usually never get justice. Now, beyond that, the defendant and his attorney, Eric Nelson, they walked into the courtroom briskly to their seats. One of the pool reporters says that they conferred a little bit as they were seated there. The defendant did have a representative in the chair. It was an older white woman. Don't know who it is. Also, they said that the atmosphere in that courtroom, you could hear a pin drop. There's carpeting in there, but if there wasn't, you could hear a pin drop. It was so silent. The defendant, one pool reporter said he was staring at the empty jury seats. Another said that when the verdict was read, he was staring at the witness seat that was obviously empty at that point. Before the verdict, the attorneys huddled in a corner, talking amongst each other. If you did notice, and this comes from me, if you did notice, the defense did not object to having Derek Chauvin be remanded into custody. Many times they do, he did not. And the foreperson, according to the pool reporter, was juror number 19. You know, one other thing that I noticed, Mike, because of those cameras in the courtroom, when the verdict was read, I saw that Derek Chauvin's hands were behind his back. Whether that was a coincidental or subconscious, but that's where they had to be when those handcuffs were put on him. moments later after that guilty verdict was read.
Absolutely. All right, we're getting word that the Minnesota Attorney General's office, Attorney General Keith Ellison, will be speaking shortly. We expect to hear from the prosecution team as well. And of course, we're waiting official reaction from George Floyd's family as we see once again that moment where this jury rendered their verdict guilty on all counts, and Derek Chauvin was handcuffed and remanded into custody. Misty Marish, you've been with us every step of the way. Your reaction to the guilty verdict?
Remember what we heard from the opening statements in this trial. The prosecution said, "You can believe your eyes." 929. And clearly, that is what found. The jury is the finder of fact. The videos, as we talked about before, a case that has so many videos that it leaves nothing to the imagination as to what occurred on that day, before, during, and even in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. That was so influential, and I agree with my friend Darren Porcher who said it. The video really was just such compelling evidence, and I think the prosecution, what they said, and it stuck with me, Mike, I know it stuck with you, "You can believe your eyes." I really think that stuck with the jury, and that's where we find ourselves with a guilty verdict on all charges today.
Yeah, it's the simplicity of the prosecution's case that this is about the 929. We're awaiting further reaction, and there you see the podium. We expect the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, to speak, and we also expect to hear from the prosecution team, Steve Schlisser, Jerry Blackwell, Matthew Frank, Aaron Eldridge. That team, normally when we talk about a dream team of attorneys, it's a defense team. This prosecution team, they were good. They were very good in cross-examination. Looks like they're getting close to that podium, so let's stick with this here. Joey Jackson, your thoughts on these prosecutors and the job they did?
My thoughts are that they were professional, they were thorough, they were organized, they were logical, they let you know where they were going, they kept it very simple with respect to what they had to say and the message they conveyed. And obviously, Mike, I'll pause when they speak. Look, and as now, I don't want to jump ahead too far, but I'd be remiss if I'm not thinking and pointing out that this is step one, right? There are other officers who were charged with aiding and abetting here, and so the outstanding question is, when will that happen? We believe it to be August, or will it happen, right? Will there be some plea deal reached? I think this was a very, very important precursor to that case, right? And if there was accountability here, I think it speaks volumes as to the mood of that community, as to the conduct, as to the commenting on that conduct by the jury. They repudiated the conduct in all respects, saying, this is not how we do, right? As